Umbara was the mysterious world in the expansion region, and home to the tenacious Umbaran people. Now, as we know, the Battle of Umbara was a devastating campaign for the Republic that led to massive casualties within the clone army. However, we know that eventually the Galactic Empire managed to subdue the Shadow World. But how did the Imperials manage this, and why is it such a challenge? Now, first things first is why Umbara is so valuable. It has one of the largest dunium supplies in the entire galaxy, and dunium is one of the key metals used in construction of, well, tons of things, particularly starships, and therefore any faction that was hoping to hold power within the galaxy is going to need a pretty plentiful supply of it. Now, Umbara is located within the Ghost Nebula, making it incredibly isolated. As well as this, Umbara has a very unique geography, meaning that sunlight does not reach the world, and it exists in a perpetual darkness. For these reasons, the Umbaras have an incredibly unique way in which they develop technology. Their technology, culture, language, just about everything is so unique to them that it makes the Umbarans incredibly difficult to attack. You see, the rest of the galaxy is a lot of the time pretty standardized. Hover tanks, walkers, blasters, etc. So when we look at, say, the arsenals of the CIS and Republic, sure, they're different, but it's mostly just minor design differences. The core technology is almost always the same. But the Umbarans are very different. Their arsenals were developed independently, and to thrive on their specific world. For this reason, anyone fighting the Umbarans on their home world is basically completely outmatched. They've evolved to be the apex predator of their land, and no invading faction stands a chance against them. Now, we do know that the Republic, as well as the Empire, did manage to subdue the world, but what exactly happened to this world following the Clone Wars? Now, we really don't have a lot to go on here because it's not particularly well recorded. So Umbara was originally pro-Republic at the beginning of the Clone Wars. However, eventually their representative senator was assassinated, and they quickly turned to the CIS. This was the event that prompted the Republic's invasion. As we know, this was a pretty long battle, and it resulted in huge amounts of casualties, and there was a lot of factors influencing this. But we do know it did end in a Republic victory. However, towards the end, majority of the clones will have been redeployed to the Outer Rim sieges once Umbara was secured. Meanwhile, the Umbarans got used to living under the Republic again, becoming rich in trading their dunium. At the end of the day, it didn't really matter to the Umbarans who they were allied with. They were always going to make an absolute fortune. So they were happy, Republic, CIS, it didn't matter to most people. By the time the Empire takes over, as mentioned, most of the clones were off-world. You see, when the Empire did take over, there was quite a lot of civil unrest, and therefore the clones were redeployed to force the ex-Separatist world into the fold. However, majority of the Umbarans were relatively comfortable working with this new empire. Again, the empire needs huge amounts of dunium with its military projects, so the Umbarans were getting pretty rich. We know it was a pretty relatively willing participant, as the Umbarans maintained a pretty high level of autonomy over their worlds when compared to others. They oversaw their own mining operations, and were managing to meet Imperial quotas no matter how high. However, there was a problem. Night Swan. A human insurgent who wanted to destroy the Empire had found a great source of income on the world. He was stealing dunium and selling it on the black market to finance his insurgency groups to fight against the Empire. And this worked pretty well for a while. However, eventually the Umbarans turned restless. You see, all of the mining operations from the years of war are now under the Empire, meeting the Imperial's quotas for dunium, as well as filling Night Swan's illegal shipments. It had brought on some pretty extreme environmental side effects. Tremors, earthquakes, all sorts. For this reason, the Umbarans decided that they needed to do what it took to protect their homeworld. They weren't going to stop supplying the Empire, because that was their biggest customer and the Empire would not be happy, so they cut off Night Swan's shipments. Now, although Night Swan was firmly against the Empire, he couldn't risk losing his cash cow of dunium, and decided that if the Umbarans wouldn't help him, then he would find somebody who would. And this was, coincidentally, the Empire. You see, Imperials were generally pretty corrupt, and if they took power, then Night Swan would probably have far less resistance in bribing their officials to get the dunium he needed to fund his guerrilla groups. For this reason, Nice One made his move. He and his agents instigated civil unrest and nurtured the anti-imperial sentiment that will have remained after the Clone Wars. After all, a lot of Umbarans were killed, and there's going to be a lot of people who didn't like the Republic and therefore did not like its successor state, the Empire. He even acquired an armada of 400 Clone Wars era vulture droids to help with his rebellion. Now, as soon as the Imperials discovered the civil unrest on Umbara, they sent an Imperial fleet to remind the Umbaras that loyalty was not optional. The original plan was simply to put the fleet there and basically force the Umbarans to rethink their position. Just a gentle reminder that they had to be loyal to the new regime, or bad things would happen. However, upon the arrival of the Imperial fleet, Night Swan quickly forced his vulture droids to attack the Imperials, and a battle ensued. Now, luckily for the Imperials, Thrawn was serving aboard one of the ships, and with the help of Ensign Vanto, one of his closest friends, they managed to stop the vulture droids. It's important to note that the vulture droids were not part of the Umbarans' resistance. Realistically, if the vulture droids weren't there, there's a solid chance the entire matter would have been able to be resolved peacefully. The Umbarans will have seen the Star Destroyers, and they would have simply said, yeah, let's not annoy the Empire. However, since the Imperials were attacked by the vulture droids and the Imperials naturally decided that the vulture droids were part of the Umbarans' resistance, this put them in a pretty sorry state. Their rebellion had been escalated by Night Swan, and now the Imperials were mad. They had to send a message: you can't just attack Imperial ships. For this reason, the Imperials quickly deployed stormtroopers to the surface of the world to arrest any upstarts and take control of all key mines and cities. Night Swan got what he wanted, and the Imperials would have been far more cooperative than the Umbarans, who, at the end of the day, just wanted to protect their world. Now, what happened following this is unclear. It's more than likely that Umbara became a police state in which the Empire held control of it with an iron fist. It's likely that a lot of Umbarans emphasised this resentment on the world, and they would eventually join the rebellion and fight against the Empire when the time came. It's also possible that now that the Empire had a firm grip on the world, they simply ravaged it for every piece of Dunium they could get. For this reason, the world's ecosystem will have collapsed, leading to a slur of natural disasters and the death and suffering of countless Umbarans. But what do you guys think happened to Umbara following the Imperial occupation? And do you feel bad for these people? Obviously, in the Clone Wars, they were portrayed as villains and pretty evil, killing the clones. However, at the end of the day, they were actually pretty peaceful. They just found themselves in the wrong situation at the wrong time. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. If so, please remember to like, share, and sub, as it's really appreciated, and it helps the YouTube algorithm put my videos for new people to find. Also, please don't forget to follow me on Twitter at @TheLawGuy, and tick the bell to make sure that you get regular updates whenever new videos do come out. But most importantly, I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a great day, and I'll see you next time.